The NBA playoffs are just about to start, and as someone who's been following along the league all season, I'm going to go ahead and make predictions for what I think is going to happen in the playoff. I'll start by talking about the play-in quickly. I think New Orleans is going to beat the Spurs, and I think the Clippers are going to beat Minnesota, and then I think Minnesota beats New Orleans, so the Clippers will be the 7th seed in the West. Minnesota is the 8th seed in the West, and in the East, I got Brooklyn beating Cleveland as the 7th seed. And although I think they should lose that game because I think they have a better chance to beat Miami than Boston, and I have Cleveland then beating the winner of Atlanta Charlotte, which I think will be Atlanta. So Cleveland goes to play Miami, Brooklyn plays Boston. As far as the matchups go, round one, I've got the Suns winning. Doesn't really matter who they end up facing. I think the Suns will just roll. We're only going to talk about round one today, by the way. Dallas versus Utah. I think this is a really good series. I'm a big fan of the moves Dallas made to get rid of Porzingis. I really like Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie. Those are two guys that I've always liked. And I think they end up winning the series. I'm not a big fan of Utah. I think that they lose this series in the first round. They get knocked down in the first round, and then they end up blowing up the team. I like Rudy Gobert, but I just don't think he's a player that can be on the star guy in a winning team. Like I think he can win. Obviously, he can be a role player, but for him to be your number two guy and to have the amount of money, the amount of percentage of your cap space devoted to Rudy Gobert, I don't think it can happen. So I got Dallas advancing. I think Luka's going to be great this series. Dinwiddie and Jalen Brunson, I think they're going to step up big. This is the 4-5 series in the West. I think this is going to end up being one of the better series. I think it could go to 7 games. I think it's going to be a really good series, and this is one of the ones that I'm really looking forward to watching. Moving on in the West, you got the 3 vs 6 Denver versus Golden State. I believe Steph Curry will be back, and I think that's going to be the difference. But this is another series that could be a really good one. I'm a big fan of Nikola Jokic, and I'm a big fan of the Warriors, just the way they play basketball, the way they move the ball, and I think the Warriors will win this one in probably about 6 games. I like Denver, but as we know, MPJ, Jamal Murray, they're out. They're not going to be a factor in the series. I think that's a big loss for Denver, because they're two important players of just their overall roster build. And I really like Jokic, and he could potentially win the MVP. It's a close race. He won it last year, so there might be some recently biased voting against him. But the fact that, especially in this game against the Warriors they played, you take Jokic out for defensive possessions when you know you're on defense and you have a timeout when you get the ball back. That's a big factor, in my opinion. To have your best player not be able to play top-notch defense, and in defensive-only situations, you end up taking him out and putting him on the bench. That's a big factor. I know Jokic is a good player, and he's a pretty good rebounder, but to take him out when you know you're only going to run a defensive possession before a stoppage of game clock, stuff like that, I think it's a very important thing that I just think it's a big factor, especially the way the Warriors play. Everyone's going to be shooting threes. I think they're pretty much fully going to be healthy at this point for the series, so I think the Warriors roll, and I'm expecting the Warriors to make a pretty good playoff run. Moving on, in the Western Conference, we have the Grizzlies series. Whoever they play again, Grizzlies are going to roll. Moving on to the East, we have the Heat in their series. I think the Heat roll as well, mainly because they get Cleveland and not, or Atlanta and not Brooklyn, because I think Brooklyn beats Cleveland, and that's I think one of the big factors there. Keeping going in the East, you have the Sixers versus the Raptors, and unlike the buzzer beater by Kawhi, I think the Sixers handle this one very nicely, get the win, keep things rolling with the James Harden, Joel Embiid duo. Milwaukee versus Chicago. I think Milwaukee just runs this one. Milwaukee's a really good team. If you've watched anything I've said about basketball, they're my pick to repeat. And Chicago, Lonzo Ball is a big miss for them. And they don't have enough to get it done. The final series we're going to talk about is Brooklyn and Boston. And this is going to be a really good series. This is obviously dependent on the way the playing goes. I think Brooklyn beats Cleveland, but Brooklyn versus Boston is going to be a really good series. If I'm Brooklyn, I'd almost lose the play-in and win the next one just to not play Boston, because I'd rather play Miami than Boston. But Boston's a really good team, and this is going to be a really good series. These teams met in the first round last year, and obviously it's a 2 versus 7. You wouldn't expect a 7 to win, but Brooklyn is not a normal 7. KD and Kyrie will be on the floor at all times, as long as no one gets hurt. And we really hope no one gets hurt in these playoffs, just I don't want a series to be impacted because of an injury to someone. And this series is going to be really exciting. This is going to be the one that I'm going to make sure I don't miss a game for. Watching Brooklyn and Boston play throughout the season, they're just two teams you like watching play. The shots that Kyrie and KD hit, the team basketball and turnaround of a season that Boston's had so far, it's just great to watch. Both of them, you almost want to root for both of them, but you can't. And this is one of the toughest picks for me. I think I'm going to have to go with Brooklyn. it's a really tough pick the way Boston's playing as a team, but I just think the best player on the floor usually ends up their team usually ends up winning series, and I think Brooklyn has the two best players on the floor. I think Kyrie's still better than Jason Tatum. Allows Jason, you can't even give the Celtics the fact that they don't have playoff experience because they're experienced at this point. But I think Brooklyn just gets it done. I don't know what it is, but I'm just leaning Brooklyn. That's the way I'm feeling. So let me know what you think of my first round of the playoffs, and we'll see how I end up doing, and then we'll do round two.